Anime live-action adaptations have had a bad history over the years, especially when it comes to Netflix. From Death Note to Cowboy Bebop, these shows just have not hit the mark, and it doesn't necessarily stop the giant streaming service from trying. In fact, we get one this year, which turned out to be a huge success. One Piece, the first season, has been arguably one of the better shows to come out, especially when it comes to adapted anime in recent history. In fact, probably history in general. And we're going to talk all about it today. This is Randy from the Hassyverse, and today we're going to talk about One Piece, the live-action anime. Now, the series consists of 8-hour-ish long episodes, and it basically gives you the best introduction to the One Piece series as you get, which is the East Blue Saga. Now, the East Blue Saga is about 1,000 chapters in the manga, and it covers pretty much all of the main story, from Luffy declaring that he wants to become king of the pirates to meeting Nami, Usopp, Zoro, and Sanji, pretty much the core of the Straw Hat Pirates. Now let's talk about Romance Dawn, which is the first 2 episodes of the series. Now, this is generally where we get Luffy declaring that he wants to be king of the pirates and he's searching for the One Piece. So he does get to meet up with Zoro, and he also meets up with Nami. And now these 2 are not officially part of the crew yet. They're just kind of using this alliance to kind of get out of their sticky situations. Look, we get a good general gist of this beginning story that's pretty faithfully based to the anime and the manga. Now, we get that kickoff with Goldie Roger in his execution, which is great, with the exception of Garp not really being there in the anime or the manga, but, it doesn't matter. Now, we also get Kobe and Luffy who meet up when Kobe is part of the Alvida Pirates, and he helps him get out of a sticky situation. We also get a bit of Buggy. This is where Luffy and the gang go to Orangetown, and they meet up with Buggy, who's also trying to become king of the pirates, and they end up having a menage a trois of sorts, where he does get tortured and whatnot. We get some great exposition here, especially with Luffy and with Shanks as well, who's the one that inspired Luffy to become king of the pirates. We also get a pretty great explanation on one of the weaknesses of having devil fruit powers in general, because water, specifically seawater, is a very, very dangerous part of having devil fruit powers, and they kind of gloss over it within the torture scene, but it's nice that they actually did add that in there. Overall, I would say the Romance Dawn arc is pretty faithful, and we get a good performance from everybody, especially Jeff Ward, which I'll go into. Jeff Ward, who is Buggy, which I'll go into later. Yeah, overall, this arc pretty much hits the bells and whistles you need. Sure, there's some things that could be nitpicked, but, overall, it's been generally good. The next arc is the Syrup Village arc, and this is where the Straw Hat gang meets up with Usopp. Basically, these 2 friends have been longtime friends, and Kaya is pretty much born into Bunny, and she's going to be in charge of this big company. But her butler is actually a famed pirate named Kuro, who him and his Black Cat pirates basically want to kill her and basically get into money. Now, this in particular is one of the weaker arcs in my opinion, just because we don't really see enough of Usopp. He doesn't really do enough in the series. We don't even get to see the kids, the Usopp pirate kids, who also join Usopp on his adventures and line and their escapades and whatnot. So that was kind of a missing thing, but we just don't generally see Usopp, at least in the manga. He definitely struggled a bit more with himself, and just, with trying to overcome this being afraidness and this ability to not to stay away from really tough situations. And we don't really see that development in this story. It's really more of Luffy and the gang kind of fighting for him and, doing the dirty work. So I didn't really appreciate that as much, but overall, the arc still pretty much hits the bells and whistles you need when it comes to getting Usopp into the series. And even with Usopp going in and saying, hey, I'm the captain of the ship now, I'm the captain of the pirates, and coming up with his own different flag at the end was pretty funny and definitely Usopp-like. So I did like it, but definitely of the episodes, this is definitely one of the weaker arcs. Now we go into Bharati, which is the 5th and 6th episodes, and this one was pretty okay, but there were definitely some major omissions, which definitely is on the weaker side too. This is where we show Sanji's arc, and this is where he and Zeph, who is like his father figure and main chef of the Bharati restaurant, they basically are at odds. And this is just really comes to a point to where Sanji decides to leave being a chef and a server because he can't really make what he wants and become a part of Luffy's crew. And this just seemed real forced, and not necessarily forced, but it seemed really fast to me. The fact that Sanji had, one spat with Zeph, albeit a pretty big one, but that was enough for him to just kind of leave the restaurant. Look, we are missing a major arc, which is Don Krieg. Now we get a little bit of the Mihawk pretty much destroying Don Krieg and his team, but we don't really see the impact that it had on Sanji, because Don Krieg and their team definitely go to Bharati in the anime and the manga, and they pretty much have an all-on big old fight where, the Straw Hats, Sanji, and Don Krieg, and even the chefs of Bharati, they're all fighting, and it really is one of the big things that pushed Sanji to kind of join the group. But the fact that we didn't really get that, and we just kind of got an abbreviated version with Mihawk and Don Krieg, and then we went to Zoro and Mihawk and got more of exposition from Zoro and Mihawk's fight, which was pretty faithfully adapted in my opinion. Still kind of felt like they could have had more of Don Krieg and really pushed that in to add to why Sanji wants to join the Straw Hat Gang. I just feel like they could have done more with these episodes, and the fact that we even got Arlong coming into here, which isn't done in the manga or in the anime, is also kind of a question mark. But overall, it is pretty good to see Sanji and see how they did this arc. I mean, looking at the Bharati restaurant, it's absolutely beautiful, as you would expect. Yeah, we definitely didn't get all the things that we probably should have gotten more from. But overall, I can understand why they wanted to go a different route. They really wanted to highlight Zoro and Mihawk, and that makes sense. I would still say it's one of the weaker, but not as weak as the Usopp arc, in my opinion. Now, let's go into Arlong Park, which is episodes 7 and 8. Now, Arlong Park basically shows Nami's story, because at this point Nami's still not really a part of the group, and she has kind of her own things to deal with, and it's basically her working for Arlong, and basically she's doing this so that way she can get enough money to buy the island that Arlong and the gang are controlling, and to pretty much free them. Now, in the manga and the anime, the islanders are aware of what she's doing, what Nami's doing, and basically are pretending to hate her so that way she can get out of the situation. But in the live action, they decide to go a different route. She's actually doing all this, and the islanders are completely unaware of what she's doing and basically hate her because they think she became a traitor. Now, I really like this approach because I think it shows Nami in a different light, because the fact that we got Nami, who was very stern and very tough on the exterior, it really showed kind of her inner altruistic side, and the fact that she really does care for, her people, and she wanted to do whatever she can, and she was able to suffer through this in order to get them out of the situation, despite knowing that these people hated her. I really kind of like how they did that approach, and I think it does lend well more on a live action front to do this. And the fact that we also get to see Arlong, coming into this, we'd see what Arlong looked like. I wasn't really sold on him, but over the arc, seeing how conniving and dangerous he is and he was to not just Nami, but to the islanders and to just everybody who comes in his path, he really became a very, very tough and very scary villain for the series. And I think it was really worth kind of making him the main villain of this season. And the fact that we got to see Arlong Park and see how that is in a live action format just looked awesome. So yeah, this arc was definitely pretty decent. We also get some big fight scenes, which I'll talk about later as well. But overall, I would say this arc, did a pretty good job to hit everything that you need to know when it comes to Arlong and just how evil he really is, and showing a real test for Luffy. We also get a really big B story in this season, and that is Garp and the Marines. Now, like I said, the main story arcs for this season have been pretty on point and have pretty much faithfully adapted generally what we would expect from the anime and the manga. But we do get a major B story in this, and that is Garp and the Marines. Now, in the anime and the manga, we don't really get much screen time from them. They don't really appear until much later, but here showrunner Maeda wanted to add this B story in order to kind of give an antagonist and to also kind of give more drama to the season. So they wanted to kind of have a recurring kind of villain that would chase them around and kind of keep that suspense going. Look, I think it's one of the better things that we would not have expected from this season, because the fact that we don't get much of the Marines in these early parts of the series. It's kind of interesting to see that backstory from them in concurrence with Luffy and the gang, and it's also very resemblant of how Cowboy Bebop did, which isn't a surprise because the same studio who did this One Piece live action also did the Cowboy Bebop live action. But it's the fact that they wanted to add kind of more of a B story for the villain. But the problem that lied for Cowboy Bebop and Vicious, getting more of Vicious' story, was the fact that he was built on more of that mysterious look and feel. And the fact that we didn't get much from Vicious throughout the series kind of added to that scariness of him when he would come across and when Spike would come across him. And the fact that they didn't really adapt it well enough there because he was more of a bumbling kind of villain. It's one of the things I really despised about Cowboy Bebop, and not a thing that most people talk about, but one that I really, really, really hated. And the fact that we got him kind of making, just looking like a dummy, just didn't really appeal well in that Cowboy Bebop world that we were expecting. But it's different for the Marines because the Marines and Garp, they're kind of silly. Even when it comes to Kobe and Helmeppo, these are kind of like goofy villains. They're not to the point to where it's truly evil and scary. They're more like they get in your way, they're going to make mistakes, seeing more of Kobe and more of Helmeppo. And this is pretty interesting, especially their dynamic, because they have kind of like a weird stepbrothers kind of feel when it comes to how they're trying to one-up each other. But, at the same time, they do look out for each other and, they're cool with each other. And they kind of grow to really respect each other and help each other, especially over the course of the season. So I really respect that. And we definitely get one of the most funniest scenes in the season. And that's just Helmeppo fighting naked with his sword, with Zoro's sword, just in his room. It's absolutely hilarious. I feel overall probably could have been a bit toned down. I feel like we did get a bit too much of Garp and the Marines, and we could have definitely used some of that time to kind of add more to the fights or add more story that they basically took out from the main arc. But overall, it was definitely a good choice to add that B story into the series, because we definitely get to see something we wouldn't see otherwise. Now, when it comes to the flashbacks, I really appreciate this piecemeal format of flashbacks. It seems like they wanted to pretty much add them in when the story demanded it, and I think it really works in this case. Even the showrunners said the reason why they wanted to do this was to kind of make the story more palatable and not to throw the backstory all at once at a newcomer who's trying to get into the series. And in the first couple episodes, we do get to see that Luffy and Shanks' backstory kind of spread out over the course of the episodes, and it really kind of adds to that understanding, making it easier for someone to understand. They did that pretty well with everybody. We even get it with Zoro and Kuina. We also get it with Usopp and his story with his mom, and just how he basically lied and played wolf, cried wolf in the village all the time. We get it from Sanji in his arcs with Zeph, and we also get it with Nami and how she joined the Arlong Pirates and the reason why she did it, and her mom and her sister as well. So they were really well placed, in my opinion. The fights are pretty good, and we get a good mix of real choreography, and we also get a lot of CGI in here. And overall, the fights felt pretty short, in my opinion, especially when it came to Luffy and his fights with the main pirates. And I can understand the reason why. These fights include a lot of CGI, and that's a lot of money. And look, it's not going to be easy to spend all that money trying to make these fights as authentic as possible. And the fact that they do get enough of the main stuff in there is really all that matters. We definitely see more just your standard fight and choreography, like with Zoro and Sanji and Arlong Park, and even with Usopp running around getting his kill in within there, and seeing Nami kick butt. All of these actual real fight choreographies were much better to see. They were also more understandably used. This series cost a lot of money already to include all the different Gum powers and just the different abilities. Would be a tall task. And it's also great because, we get Willem screams in there too. Now, when it comes to the characters, they definitely portrayed their anime counterparts as well as you would expect. And at the top, Iñaki Godoy, he's done such a great job adapting arguably one of the hardest anime characters to ever adapt, and that's Monkey D. Luffy. And it's just because Monkey D. Luffy is so quirky. He's lovable, he's optimistic, but he's also dumb and doesn't know how to read a room. And we get that scene when they're at the dinner with Usopp and Kaya, and he pretty much says the thing out loud that we're pirates and we're trying to become king of the pirates. I'm trying to become king of the pirates. And it's like, dude, do you know how to read a room? They're sitting here afraid of pirates, yet you're saying I'm a pirate, blah, blah, blah. So, you get that lovable, just quirkiness from Luffy, but you also get his serious side, and he played that pretty much to a T, especially one of the best scenes in anime when Nami was just, when she broke down, knowing that she couldn't do anything to stop Arlong, and she asked Luffy, I need your help. Like, that moment, you can see in Yaki's eyes that he was trying to be serious, and he was going to be there for her. Because that's her friend and he's going to stand up for her. And he's just done a really good job at really nailing what Monkey D. Luffy is. Now, I want to go into Zoro a bit because Zoro started off a bit different, in my opinion. Makinyu, who is no stranger to live action anime adaptations, he portrayed him in a much more dramatic way than you would expect. It felt a bit different from what you would expect from Zoro, because while Zoro has a one-track mind, he also had a comedic role to him. He was also very quirky as well, and that's why he's one of the first people to join Luffy's group. We don't really get that. We get more of a serious and dramatized version of Zoro early on, but it does calm down as the series goes on. I think he fits more into the role, but overall he's done a great job with Zoro. And look, the fact that you can wield 3 swords, which he does do, look, much props, using 3-sword style. That was one of the lowest bars I had for Zoro and coming into it. Can he do it? Will he do it? And the fact that he was able to pull it off was great. So I'm really glad to see that. But yeah, I think, just his fighting during the series has been pretty good. And, especially the one with Mihawk, I think that also showed kind of a shift in his character, where he kind of went into a more, relaxed role and became more a part of the group. Next is Usopp, and we're going to talk about Jacob Romero Gibson, who has done a really solid job at being Usopp. You really get a good mix of cool yet quirky when it comes to Usopp. He can be really uptight and kind of nervous at times when situations get kind of scary, which you definitely see him do. But you also see that overconfidence and all of that line and trying to build himself out to be like the man. And, I really loved his adaptation of it. But we really got a nice cooled down version of that. I think Gibson did a great job at making Usopp. Gibson took over that role and, made it into his own. Now we're going to go into Sanji, and that's Taz Skylar, who has done a pretty solid adaptation of Sanji as well. Now, we do get a scene of him smoking a cigarette very early on when they first meet, but pretty much ever since then, we don't get anything of him smoking a cigarette or anything like that. So I think they wanted to establish that in the beginning that he does, but to have him walking around with a cigarette, or more, thankfully, not a lollipop, is actually quite interesting. And I feel like it's a good move on their part to not really have him walking around with a cigarette or trying to fight with it. And especially to ditch that Brooklyn accent too is very, very appreciated. Overall, I do like how Skylar adapted Sanji, and especially his love affair with Nami, which is pretty much one-sided. It's been pretty adapted well too. I kind of like how it's more of a toned down version, because in the anime it's definitely much more cartoonish, his love and how much he expresses his love for Nami. Sanji Light is loving Nami, but he's just real chill about it. And even when he gets pretty much disregarded in the different moments, he's like, oh, he just takes it, but doesn't really make much of it. So, I really appreciate, how he adapted it. And look, his fight scenes have been pretty great too. Seeing him kick butt in Arlong Park was good. And the fact that he did make that reference to naming all of your moves, like every good fighter should say their moves before they do it. It was a great throw to shonen anime in general, and one I can appreciate. Now we get Nami, the calm and collected navigator and thief of the seas, and Emily Rudd has done a pretty solid job, and you can really see the kind of range she has, because she just really takes no nonsense. She has that tough exterior, she's just doing what she needs to do to get by, basically. And it really comes crumbling down over the episodes, especially in Arlong Park, where, like I mentioned, one of the saddest scenes when she does ask Luffy for help when she can't help her friends and her family anymore. She realized she can't beat Arlong by herself and she needs help. It just really shows kind of the range she had. You really felt it in that moment. And what is a really sad part in the anime and in the manga, she really took on head on and did a really great job adapting. You could really feel it, how the pain she felt in that scene, and she really took it. So I'm really proud of how she was able to do it. And overall with Nami, she's been pretty solid in her adaptation as well. You can tell that the Straw Hat Gang in general, they had a real good rapport among each other. And a couple other notable villains. Let's take a look at Buggy, who, Jeff Ward gave a great performance. He acted his butt off as Buggy, and I think it's one of the most biggest surprises of the season. And look, because Buggy is kind of like a villain turning anti-hero who kind of helps out and kind of disrupts the Straw Hat Pirates at times. So, you kind of expected that. But the fact that we got just such a great performance from him, that he is very, very haunting, very scary looking when it came to the Orangetown arc early on in the season. And the fact that we got, him torturing Luffy, but at the same time have kind of like a comedy gag to him was definitely good. And he had that nice balance. He really struck that good balance between bumbling villain and truly evil villain. Look, I definitely expect to see more of him in the series in some form. even though he does come around at times. But I think they're going to definitely make an effort to add him in future seasons, much more than maybe typically. And also I want to talk about Arlong, who, like I said earlier, is not really imposing from the trailers. And like when you first see him, he's not as big as you would expect. But over the episodes, you really get that exposition and you see him and, you know, how he would kind of wheel and deal in these situations. It showed how dark and evil he really is. And that really added to that scariness of Arlong. And look, McKinley Belcher III did a great job adapting Arlong and making him very intimidating over the course of those episodes, and kind of added on to that evil factor that is Arlong and why he is one of the most feared pirates of the seas. Now, I want to say about some of these characters, while many of these characters and villains are adapted pretty faithfully, one thing that you just can't really unsee when it comes to watching it is just how kind of silly some of these guys look. And I think it's one of the things newcomers to the series will definitely have to kind of like really face with when it comes to understanding the series, because look, these characters, they may look kind of weird, but they're very evil and still do some really scary stuff. So it's just kind of one thing to point out also that I noted when watching the series. Now, let's go into the production, and specifically we're going to talk about the CGI, which I think was pretty solid for the most part. Sure, it's not groundbreaking, but, you know, it does all the things you would expect, with some little issues, but I'm probably going to nitpick a bit, but, you know, I want to point them out. Now, Buggy's Chop Chop powers. Look, for the most part, they look pretty good. You can definitely see his abilities, how he's able to kind of take apart his body and, you know, fight, you know, with that and use that to pretty much the degree that he needs. I think it was done pretty well, pretty tastefully. Luffy's Gum Gum powers, too, look pretty solid overall, especially his finishing moves. Like, we got to really see them in its glory. And I think that the CGI in particular surpassed what I expected. Even in the trailer, when I saw it, it looked pretty promising for the most part. But I still kind of had a side eye because you never know. Trailers are meant to kind of bring the best out. Overall, they've all been pretty good looking. Like, even if you look at a moment when Luffy was stretched and tortured by Buggy in the second episode, like, you know, you could tell, like, the CGI actually really kind of followed through in that moment. I mean, even look at the Lord of the Coast, who's that massive sea serpent that Shanks pretty much uses his hockey powers to control to get away. That looked really good. There were some bad moments, like Buggy clearly hopping on one leg when he had one of his legs gone. You could definitely see part of the leg there, but I'm really nitpicking. But look, I wanted to point out because I thought it was kind of hilarious. I was like, wait, is he really just hopping? You could kind of see his foot there. It was kind of funny, but, you know, I'm just really nitpicking here. Now, I really love the title cards. I love how they decided to kind of change it up for different characters in the episodes. Like the second episode, you got kind of like more of a Buggy-inspired one. You know, it would kind of change for different ones, like Arlong got his own kind of version. So I really kind of appreciate that. I mean, it's something that's real small, something that they really wouldn't have needed to do, but it just kind of added to that. Hey, you know, that's kind of cool that they decided to really do that, kind of change it up, you know, with each episode. I thought it was kind of clever and cute that they actually did decide to do that. Now, the music. The music is absolutely epic, and it's like so epic that I think that John Williams is definitely very proud of the guys who created the soundtrack, because we get some great music. Very Pirates of the Caribbean-esque kind of music. It gives you that feeling that you're off on an adventure. They're off to do some big things. It's just really pleasant to listen to. And I mean, some of the songs, Wealth, Fame, Power. You also got My Sails Are Set. And most importantly, you get We Are, which is like the iconic intro for the One Piece anime. And the fact that we get kind of a newer and more different rendition for this live action was really awesome. And the fact that they kind of set sail to that version of We Are was awesome. It almost had a tear in my eye. It was that beautiful. It really was. I was real proud of it. But yeah, overall the music is really great. And I think, that alone is worth checking out if you've seen the live action and you just want to really come across like all the different songs that came on during this series. Yeah, definitely check out the soundtrack. It's really good. Then the set designs. Look, we got a piece of the set designs. We got pictures of it before the live action anime came out. We got to see the Bharati, we got to see the Going Merry, we got to see Arlong Park. So I kind of knew that it was going to look good, especially that they crafted this all themselves. But to see it actually in the show, it really just added that extra dimension of just wow. That wow factor was really incredible to see how they actually adapted all of that into the series, and the fact that they were fighting and they were just kind of interacting in these worlds. And it just really gives me a good hope for like how the future of the seasons are going to go, because if they were able to do it with these, I feel very confident they can take on other stuff like Alabasta and so Water 7 and so on. So I think it's something that is really, really appreciated. And the fact that they take great care in their set designs was really a standout moment for the series, and just shows you that they are really adapting this series seriously. I appreciate it. All the people who helped work on those set designs, like, hand clap to you for it, because like that is truly, truly amazing. Now, some of my thoughts on the future of this series. Like I said, this adaptation has been very solid, and it's given you the greatest of introductions into the One Piece world. But one thing you need to know is that it's very, very localized. We get a very small scale of what is about to happen in this world. The One Piece world is one of the biggest and one of the greatest in anime, and some of the stuff that's in the Grand Line, you really won't be able to comprehend. It's gonna really be interesting to see how they adapt Alabasta, the desert world that's full of political strife and basically where the Straw Hat Gang needs to prevent a war from happening. And, we're gonna see a lot of intensity ramp up in this, because there's some real world implications here. And I'm just kind of curious to see how these characters are going to adapt it and how the production is going to adapt these series. We're going to see more new characters. We're going to see Porcas Diaz. We're going to see Nico Robin, Baby in some form. We're going to also see Chopper. And Chopper is definitely going to play a role. Probably join the crew. How are they going to adapt him? I mean, is it going to be just straight CGI? Is it going to be an actor who just wears antlers, kind of like Sweet Tooth? Is it going to be like a combination of sorts? Is it going to be like maybe an actor in a green suit? I mean, who knows how it's going to be adapted? I mean, I feel the Sweet Tooth approach is probably the more likely and probably the most palatable of versions, in my opinion, because it looks pretty good on Sweet Tooth. So I feel like it would do well on another Netflix adaptation. Showrunners did say that they plan, ideally, in ideal situations, for this series to have 11, 12 seasons. While that feels pretty palatable, there are going to be some questions they're going to need to ask when it comes to adapting some of these arcs, because there's plenty of arcs to choose from. Some of them are very inconsequential, like Thriller Bark, Then you got other more sophisticated arcs like Wano, which is going to probably take a couple seasons to adapt. This is coming from somebody who has not read that far in the manga, but I do know that it is going to get serious. And I know enough about how One Piece gets. That's why I'm trying to furiously catch up. But I do know things get more intense and there's going to be a lot more story. But also, just to speculate, I do want to know, how is Luffy going to look in Gear 2, Gear 3, Gear 4, Gear 5, But yeah, I'm just curious to see how they are going to adapt the series, but that's a question for another time and place. I mean, especially we need to get through plenty more seasons of this story before we can really talk about that. A lot of these characters are going to get more crazy looking as the series moves on, and yeah, I'm going to wonder how well Tomorrow Studios and these showrunners and how Netflix decides to approach adapting this live action anime into something that not only seems more palatable for a newcomer to kind of continue on with, but to respect and keep up with how the manga and the anime is going. And I feel the one advantage they will have through all this is that Oda's gonna be definitely on everything. He's gonna stamp every bit of approval he has for each of these moments. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages they need to do with keeping with the series, is to have Oda Sensei continually to check off what he approves of in this series. Because if they let off on that front, this series is gonna tank. I can guarantee it. That's one of the reasons why Cowboy Bebop also failed in that department. Watanabe Sensei was a part of it, but he wasn't as big on that series as I would have expected, and that I realized, and that shows why that series didn't do well. But the fact that you have Oda here, I think this series should be fine. And I think even in the future, look, we got a great start to the series. I think it could continue on. I feel like season 2 is going to do pretty good, and given everything else happened the same, it's a great companion series I would love to watch in congruence with reading the manga and watching the anime. So I'm excited, and if you guys haven't seen it out there, definitely see it yourselves. Now I want to thank you guys for hearing me talk a bit about the One Piece live action. And I want to know what your favorite part of the series is. Do you have a favorite character? Do you have a favorite moment in the season 1? And what do you expect season 2 is going to be like? Do you think it's going to hit home, or do you think it's going to crash and burn? We live in a world where anything can happen, so I'm not going to put my hopes up on one way or the other. I'm going to just take it with each season with a grain of salt. And if you don't mind, please hit that platypus. It could be there, somewhere on the screen. And don't forget to have a great day, a great morning, a great night, wherever it is, wherever you are. And don't forget to stay nerdious.